Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 123. We've had a little run of big league guests, and we're actually going to break it up just a little bit. And today's guest is a recently retired big leaguer who had an awesome playing career, really developed an awesome reputation as a guy who kind of did whatever it took to help the team he was on, help them win. So just developed a really, really good perspective by the end of his career and has done some cool stuff in retirement to help the next generation of players. So I'm excited to hear what he has talking about, and I think this is something that will really benefit coaches and players, parents alike. So I'm looking forward to it. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the most comprehensive NSF certified for sport daily nutritional supplement I've ever tried. With so many stressors in life, it's difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits and give our bodies the nutrients they need to thrive. As a father of 3 young kids and a co-founder of multiple businesses in multiple states, on top of still being an avid exerciser, I know that busy schedules can really take their toll on us. Whether it's poor sleep, exercise or life stressors, environmental factors, or simply not eating enough of the right foods, we can wind up deficient nutritionally. This is where Athletic Greens can really help. It's a game-changing nutritional insurance policy. They simplify the logistics of getting optimal nutrition on a daily basis by giving you just one thing with all the best things. And that's why I use it daily and recommend it to our athletes. One scoop of Athletic Greens contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients, including a multivitamin, multimineral, probiotic, green superfood blend, and more. They work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet, increase energy and focus, aid in digestion, recovery, and supporting of a healthy immune system. This all can happen without taking multiple products. While most nutritional products come to market and stay stagnant, Athletic Greens continues to obsessively improve this one holistic formula based on the latest research, producing 53 improvements over the last decade. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in third-party testing to ensure their customers continue to receive the highest quality and best daily nutritional habit on the planet. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, and contains less than 1 gram of sugar without compromising on taste. They put 75 ingredients through the NSF for Sport certification to come up with a formula that's trusted by some of the world's best athletes, including our own. Right now, Athletic Greens is giving our listeners 10 free travel packets with their subscription. Simply go to athleticgreens.com/Cressey to receive my offer. These travel packs are perfect for supporting your immune system, energy, and gut health when you're traveling for games, training, or simply when you're on the go. They can be a great counterbalance to less than ideal on-the-road food options. So if you want to bridge the gap between deficient and optimal and give yourself the best chance to get nutrient diversity, then head to athleticgreens.com/Cressey and get your 10 free travel packets today. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Cressey, Cressey. Today's guest was raised in Virginia and attended the University of Virginia as a third baseman and then outfielder. After his junior year, he was drafted in the 5th round of the MLB draft by the Chicago Cubs in 2007. After the 2010 season, he was traded to the Tampa Bay Rays, who called him up to the big leagues in May of 2011. In his first major league at-bat, he had a 2-run home run. In the years that followed, he became a mainstay in the big leagues with the Rays before being traded to the Cleveland Indians in 2016, a year in which he led the big leagues in hit by pitches. After an appearance with Cleveland in the World Series in 2016, he stayed with the organization through the end of 2018. He announced his retirement in 2020, ending his career with 517 MLB games played, a career .250 average, and a .339 on-base percentage. Please welcome to the show, Brandon Guyer. Hey, Brandon, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm actually really excited for this because I think a lot of times with this show, I know guys really well, that they train with us or things like that. And you're a guy like run and joke. I know you on TV. I know you on the internet. I watched you play in the outfield behind, Kluber and Brandon Gomes, a lot of those guys in the outfield with Sam Fuld all those years. And I always just admired the way that you played and respected you from afar. So it's cool to see that you're still staying super involved in the game in retirement and obviously doing some cool stuff, which we'll talk about. But I think maybe the best place to start is, digging a little deeper on you is you were a standout football player in high school. And I think we both know, unfortunately, that's kind of a dying breed, the multi-sport athlete. And, you're seeing 16-year-olds that are throwing 100 and, selling out for the baseball dream. Can you talk a little bit about how, being a multi-sport athlete really impacted, your developmental path on the baseball side of things?
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're bringing that up because that's hard to see nowadays where so many athletes are just playing, whether it's baseball or whatever sport year round. And I'm like, just think of how it's hurting their development and, whether it's physical or mental development hurting so much. But yeah, I was drawn to all sports. My parents, never told me, hey, do this sport. It was always up to me. So they just wanted me to do what I had the most fun doing. And I think that's the
Mhm.
name of the game. Like, do something that you're having fun. You're not pressured to play. So what it does, I just really think, as I'm sure you know, it increases your athletic development. It limits overuse injury, even though
Mhm.
I had a couple Tommy Johns, and I actually
Mhm.
had Tommy John when I was 12 years old.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and I didn't
Mhm.
even play baseball year round.
Mhm.
But it's going to limit that. It's going to limit burnout. So thankful that my parents were not pushing me in one direction, let me kind of experience a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And that's what, when I'm talking to athletes or parents nowadays, like I'm always pushing that.
Mhm.
Play at all sports. I remember getting recruited to the University of Virginia. The coaches there, and specifically Kevin McMullen,
Mhm.
they love recruiting
Yeah.
multi-sport athletes, and I think a lot of colleges do. So I think we got to keep that in mind as youth athletes, that hey, colleges like this. They don't want someone really, obviously they'll go after some of the younger players that are just playing one sport, but if you stand out, but for the majority, they like those multi-sport athletes. So yeah.
Yeah. I think and obviously even in the realm you're in now, like you appreciate that, playing multiple sports, it's different social circles too, and you realize, you go from high school to college, you're going to play summer ball, you get to pro ball. I mean, you were Cubs, you were Rays, you were Indians, you were, White Sox, Giants, like you played in all these different organizations. That's a different collection of teammates at every level, as well as you have to learn to adjust to different surroundings. And I was worried about that one kid who just plays with the same 19 other kids year round. I mean, do you think that it just gave you a little bit of adjustability just with, I mean, you're a guy from Virginia who's walking into clubhouses with players from Venezuela and the Dominican Republic, Japan, you name it.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that much, but that
Mhm.
makes total sense. And I think that's kind of more the mental side of it. Like you're able to adjust quicker because you've been playing with all different sorts of players,
Mhm.
all different sorts of attitudes, all different sorts of routines, people getting ready. And then I think through that, you're able to kind of come up with your own system or
Mhm.
protocol that works best for you. So yeah, I
Mhm.
totally agree.
Were you were a standout athlete, obviously in Virginia. You wound up at the University of Virginia. Was that like the kid in Nashville that just wants to go to Vanderbilt, or was there appeal of you like leaving the state, or did you want to be close to home? What led you there?
Yeah, so the funny part about that is my first 3 years in high school, I was an average or below average baseball player. I was set after junior year to play football at Virginia or go play football somewhere else.
Mhm.
And it just so happened. So I read a book called Heads Up Baseball,
There you go.
other books by Harvey Dorfman and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I knew that it was my mindset limiting me more than anything else because I had pretty good physical skills. So going into senior year, read that book and just dove in. Didn't just read it. Literally, I think that's what too many young athletes do. They read this stuff or they listen to podcasts or whatever, but then they don't do the most important part, applying it to
Mhm.
life, to sports. So I literally applied it every single day and it changed everything, went off. And then, the first coach that came to my house for a recruiting visit was Brian O'Connor at UVA.
Mhm.
And UVA back in 2004, they weren't necessarily a powerhouse. Like they were in the
Mhm.
ACC, pretty good.
Mhm.
But he sold me. He's like, we are coming in, we are changing this program. And it just so happened it was 2 hours away from where I grew up in Northern Virginia. And man, he just came, he sold me. I didn't go on any other recruiting, like
Mhm.
official visits after Virginia. I was like, I'm in, let's go. So that's kind of how it came about. But,
Yeah.
before senior year, I was not expecting to play college baseball. It was quite a shift.
That's awesome. So, and you maybe you led in my next question is I'm really always fascinated by guys' developmental paths. And you obviously took a big step forward at Virginia, played in the Cape Cod Baseball League. Obviously had a great couple of years there. And I'm interested is that kind of continued when you got to pro ball, right? And you kind of skyrocketed through the minor leagues, and I mean hit 340, 350, 360 at various levels. And then you get to the big leagues, and we both know the big leagues are really hard, right? It's one thing making it, it's another thing altogether to actually stick there. What were the adjustments that you feel like you had to make, whether that was college to pro ball, different levels of pro ball, or just going from AAA to the big leagues for that first time?
Yeah, so even just the high school to college, my first year in college, I think I hit like 280 and
Mhm.
didn't start right away. And I think that was an adjustment. A part of me thought I was a little exonerated from, I had this scholarship, already worked on the mental game a lot. I was like, okay, I'm good. Going to college, that game sped up even more when you get to college. And then I was like, okay, I need to work even harder on the mental game, realize no matter what you achieve, you're never exonerated. So I went all back into the mental game, even more books, applying, working with mental skills coaches, and then getting to the minor leagues. You might have missed a year there because I skipped low A in 2008 and went to double A Tennessee. After 200 at bats, I was hitting 190. And it was a turning point for me. So I got sent down from double A. And that first year in double A, I thought that, man, I can't hit double A pitching. What the heck is that? Like, I'm doing everything I can, and it just wasn't. But it was something I needed to go through. It was one of those throughout the rest of my career. I could always look back on that year, that situation when I couldn't even hit my weight the first 200 at bats. And I was like, if I could make it through that, get sent down and finish that year really strong in high A, and then next year win double A player of the year, what I'm going through now, it's nothing. So thankful that it happened. But then getting to the big leagues, it was a struggle because I was used to playing every single day. I get up there, I'm all of a sudden the platoon guy and playing mostly against lefties. Every now and then they'd give me a little bone and let me play against righties, which was a mental game in itself because it's like, oh God, I'm playing against righties. I need to get a hit here so I can play against more righties. That was another, mental side of it to get like a little hurdle there. But I think getting to the big leagues, getting used to that role and playing that role really well and not trying to be somebody else, realizing that after talking to coaches and all that, okay, Brandon, for the most part, this is going to be your role. And then so I went all in. I'm just going to be the best platoon player, the best teammate that I can possibly be because it's a little easier to get to the big leagues. It's hard to stay there. And so for me to stay there, I knew I had to play that role well. Help the team win any way I could, play good defense, hit lefties really well. So all that kind of stuff, kind of like the journey of my career there.
I'm glad you brought up the double A experience because I saw that in the stat line and maybe didn't have context for it because it's interesting. I think there's this heavy debate in baseball, like the successes and the struggle. It seems like you benefited from that. And then we have the other end of the, kind of spectrum where we have coaches that think it's like, oh my gosh, you might mentally crush them. You'll hear about, 20-year-olds going to the big leagues too soon. And we feel like that, it can really set them back, kill their confidence. All that is, where do you stand on that argument? Is it very player dependent? Is it dependent on the resources that they have around them? What's your frame of mind on it?
Man, I think everyone's different. Just like, when teaching like pre-game routines or in-game routines where like really the mental game lives, what works for somebody else there's no the way. I think you got to find your way and continue to make adjustments. So like when it comes to players getting to the big leagues, I think everyone's just, idiosyncratically wired differently. Some people can handle that pressure. Some people can handle that adversity and failure that is going to happen. Others can't. And I know first off, like, an example, if I were to get drafted out of high school and gone right to the pros, I don't think I would have done well. I wasn't ready maturity-wise and time management, a whole bunch of things go into it. I wasn't ready for that. Whereas someone else that age could be in the big leagues like Bryce Harper and stuff and thrive. I think everyone's different. The way they progress in their career physically and mentally to be ready for that moment just differs. It really does. And I think it's up to the front office and everyone else to decide, is this kid going to be able to handle it? Is it going to ruin his mindset? He comes up and he struggles really bad and then he's never going to be able to do it. So it's definitely an interesting little factor there.
I think it probably depends on, where they're playing as well. Like there's certainly some markets that aren't expecting to go out and win the World Series. Right. And, when we deal with young athletes, a lot of times, training is all about giving them opportunities to fail with no consequences, like where they have to learn their way around movements. And, you see guys that are, getting blown up in BP with cutters at 45 feet and things like that, because that's the time when it's okay to fail and it doesn't impact things. And that's hard to do in some markets that are always about winning, is that there's no opportunity to fail with no consequences. So I'm sure that plays into discussion as well.
Yeah. And I remember, so I got drafted by the Cubs and I was in double A with them, and man, it worked out great. I was like pretty much blocked there. They had Soriano and a couple other guys in the big leagues, Marlon Byrd and some others. I wasn't getting up there anytime soon. So getting traded to the Rays and then the next year making my debut, it just worked out perfectly because it was a really good situation. Smaller market team, still very competitive. But yeah, the situation you're in, like you just said, is definitely a big part of it.
You hinted this a little bit. I saw you a lot over the years, both in Tampa and in Cleveland, but, something that immediately stood out to me is you seem to have like a lot of self-awareness. It's like you understood what your role was, whether it's, taking a hit by pitch, playing good defense, running the bases aggressively, obviously playing against lefties. Was that something that, you actively understood, like you figured it out on your own? Was it the kind of thing where a manager or a bench coach or somebody like that pulled you aside, to kind of explain, this is how you're going to stick on this roster? Where did that awareness come from?
Yeah, so I think it started, I think those first 3 years in high school, struggling a lot. Once again, so glad it happened. I needed it. And I think nowadays, if you're not signing as a freshman, sophomore, people are freaking out
That's
where,
true.
hey, I didn't sign until I was a senior. And there's other very good players like that too. But it took that time to really, I needed to go through that failure. Failure, struggle triggers growth a lot of times if you learn from it. So took all that, learned from it senior year. Going into Virginia, wasn't starting right away. So once again, talking to the coaches there, figuring out what I got to do. And funny story, I was actually recruited as a third baseman, and we had Ryan Zimmerman. So for a couple games, I would play third, and he played shortstop. And I made too many errors, so they put me in the outfield for good. But then it was like, okay, if I'm going to be an outfielder now, I got to be all in. I got to be all in if I want to get onto that field and play, that role well, even though don't be pissed and blame and complain others. It was my fault. I wasn't good at third. Now I got to do everything there. And then as continue to go up the levels, I think when I got to the big leagues, it kind of just evolved my role. I didn't know initially that was going to be my role in the big leagues. But then once I got there and after like a month or so, I realized not starting against righties. And then talking to Joe Madden, like Davey Martinez, the bench guys, they hinted it and stuff like that. So yeah, I got it in my head. Okay, at least for now, this is going to be my role. So just do your absolute best to put yourself in the best position to succeed. And you bringing up the self-awareness, that's everything. You have to know yourself. You have to know really who you are at your absolute best. Because when you're struggling inevitably with baseball or life in general, to be able to, flip the switch or create that confidence or just put yourself in the best position to succeed, especially when it matters most, you have to have self-awareness to know who you are at your absolute best. So I think really just try to develop that. And I think three main things for that: how I carried myself, my body language, how I would focus, present moment focus, most importantly, self-talk. Okay, what am I doing with all three of those when I'm at my absolute best? Okay, then have the awareness when I'm starting to spiral down, when I'm not playing like I should or acting or living like I should. Okay, then you got to stop that downward spiral back up by knowing who you are and acting like that. Because when you start acting like it, then you become it. You're not faking it. You just know who you are at your best. So I'm glad you brought up self-awareness. Self-awareness is really everything. So yeah.
I always talk to athletes, and probably maybe in the context of the mental side of things, but it certainly relates to the physical aspect of it. Is like you have how well stressors get access to you, what the actual stressor is, which is person specific, and then how do you respond to it? So like if we're talking about social media, like you have the option to just not be on social media. People can't yell on you on Twitter if you're not on Twitter, right? And then there's like, what are they saying? Are they saying horrific things to you, or are they telling you stink of baseball? Like there's many levels of abrasiveness that you can encounter online. And then there's like, do you get angry? Do you shout back at this? Do you shrug it off and just laugh at them? There's all these different levels. And I think those are very learned skills. And some people just get to the point, like we have a very well-known big leaguer who's on social media. And one day he's like, yeah, I have like a timer on my app. He's like, I get 2 minutes on Instagram a day, so I don't get stuck in anything stupid. It's like, it's a really impressive level of self-awareness. And he's like a super mellow guy that it can't fluster him at all. So like, it sounds like you did that in the air probably before social media is what it is now.
Yeah, that's a good call with social media, because even if you're not trying to pay attention to all that stuff, I think it just lives in your subconscious.
Defines you.
You're going to be thinking out there on the field, oh, what if I mess up? Well, now what are they going to say about me? And you might be having those thoughts. Almost like you probably heard, I don't know if you've heard the story of the two wolves, like the positive, negative, loving, hateful, all that stuff. When you're reading that stuff, I feel like you're feeding that negative, bad wolf, negative self-image wolf. And then during the game, it's back there. So, which one you feed the most is what's going to come out the most. And I think that your self-image and everything is huge when you are playing at that, whatever level you're at, but playing at the highest level, the game's so fast, the talent gap's so small. But what you're saying with that player, that's amazing self-awareness to be able to do that. And one thing I really talk about is create your identity, which, identity literally means repeated beingness. So who are you at your best? I do three things: on the field, off the field, in the classroom, if they're still in school. So on the field, who are you at your best? And then it's, okay, what qualities do you embody for that? But then also, what actions and behaviors? So for like that guy, action and behavior, set a target for 2 minutes on Instagram. And then once you have those, dude, self-awareness through the roof, and then you're able to play free and loose, because free and loose is literally everything in this game. And whether it's youth players not able to because of all the pressure from coaches or their parents and all that stuff, they can never play free and loose. And that's why some end up quitting, and that's why they don't perform to the highest level. So literally everything I'm doing now personally, and when I played, is to help each and every athlete get to the point where they can play free and loose.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game. So I know I kind of went off there, but
no, it's great feedback. It's like this concept of bandwidth. And I think, I see it a lot. Like you have little leaguers, you have big leaguers, and different people have different capacities. Like personally, I can deal with a million different crazy things on a regular basis. And like, I jump in the gym and it's the place where I blow off steam, and I can tune out every distraction in the world because I know that's what kind of gets me right. But there are other people, and we've seen, players that are going through divorces or, sick family members, whatever it is. And it really does detract from what they do on the field because they don't have the same kind of bandwidth that maybe a teammate has. So, it's a great example of how this stuff is so kind of context dependent. One thing I did want to bring up that I think is really cool, even if it's just to highlight it and maybe reiterate something that's so valuable, is, you're a guy who had a great big league career, and you're still super involved in the game. And you literally outlined 3, probably even more times when you struggled, when you were, to be honest, underappreciated as a baseball player, right? You struggled with the first 3 years of high school, were late to be recruited. You get to the University of Virginia, you have to change positions. You get to pro ball, when you go to AA and you struggle, you go to the big leagues and realize you're not going to be a regular and you've got to recalibrate. There's so many parents out there right now that want to be, they're not even helicopter parents anymore. They're snowplow parents. They want to pave their way. They want to make things easier. And I just think in the big picture, we have so many people that have no idea how many late bloomers there are. I actually did this one day. I've talked about this on a previous podcast. We were doing New Balance area code camps one fall. I had some travel coming up, and brought up that it was coming up, and I want to say it was like fall of 16, and it was right when Max Scherzer had started up with us. And Scherzer was like, what are the area code games? Like, didn't even know what they were. And I mean, we're talking about like, Clayton Kershaw was there, Dustin Pedroia was there. Those, a lot of the better players of our generations had been there. And Max didn't even know. Max was, he was drafted out of high school, but he had no idea where the ball was going. He needed college on a number of fronts. And it was really interesting because we probably had 40 big leaguers that came in that day to the facility. A lot of big time dudes, we pulled them. The only one that came in that day that had gone to area code games was Sam Folt. He was like the greatest player in the history of New Hampshire. And he obviously wound up at Stanford, had a great career there. But it was like stunning to me that we're literally talking about like 95% of big leaguers weren't even like what we would probably call standout high school players. They weren't top 240 players in the country, particularly in their own region. So it blew my mind. Has that been your experience? Like, as you both played at the big league level, like we both know Corey Kluber, like he went to Stetson. He didn't go to Texas. He didn't go to Florida. You played with a lot of those guys. Did you see way more late bloomers in the big leagues and even now in your work with a lot of these guys on the private side?
Yeah, that's interesting. One who comes to my mind right away is Kevin Kiermaier. I think he was like 30-something round, whereas if there was a draft right now, he probably wouldn't have been drafted because of the rounds, But so I think I've seen a mix of both. You have your studs that end up making it, who are studs like their whole life.
Yeah.
But what I see a lot, man, is and saw when I was young, you got these early bloomers that are just dominating Little League and then playing travel ball or playing year round and then getting to high school. All of a sudden they stop growing. They haven't had the work ethic because they haven't needed to, because everything was so easy for them. And then people are catching up to them. I feel like I see that more than the other way around. And I can count, I actually have a list somewhere of all these players in high school who were getting all district, all state. I was struggling those first 3 years. I don't think any of them made it. 1 or 2 made it to college. Big leagues, no, but none of them. So I think as parents and young players, we got to stop worrying about other people. We got to just focus on what we can do each and every day to get a little bit better. That's the name of the game. What can you do every day? A little bit, a lot, not a lot, a little. And just every day do that. And then everything else is going to take care of itself. But to answer your question, I think it's a good mix. I really
Yeah.
do.
We interrupt this episode with a quick reminder that this podcast is brought to you by Athletic Greens. It's an NSF certified all-in-one superfood supplement with 75 whole food sourced ingredients designed to support your body's nutritional needs. I use this product daily, and a ton of our athletes do as well. Head to athleticgreens.com/Cressey and claim my special offer today for 10 free travel packs with your first purchase. I'd encourage you to give it a shot too, especially because of this great offer and because it gives you peace of mind knowing that you're covering all your nutritional bases. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Cressey, CRESSEY, to get that special offer.
Nice. So I always joke with like retired guys that we've had. We had, Will Middlebrooks and Tom Kohler and, Kevin Youkilis, a lot of guys who have come on and been great guests. I love their answers because they can be brutally honest, right? They can really illustrate just how hard this game. And normally we talk to guys in the heart of their career. They're not going to give away their best secrets, and I wouldn't expect them to. But you're retired. You can spill the billion beans. Like, what was impossible for you to hit? What did you struggle with? Obviously, what did you feast on? Were there certain pitchers that you absolutely hated to face, and guys that you seem to have better results with for one reason or another?
Yeah. So the pitch that gave me the most trouble was a righty changeup or splitter, whatever you want to call it. And I remember I was playing with Alex Cobb in Tampa.
Yeah.
I remember talking to him. I'm like, why do not all, and James Shields did it also, the righty changeup or lefty changeup. I think you're starting to see it a lot more nowadays. But back then I was like, why is not everyone? I'm so glad not everyone's doing it, because it's the hardest pitch to see and pick up and actually stay back on and hit good at a good contact point. So that's the pitch that I struggle with the most, I would say. What I like the pitch the best, I think middle away, able to get extended. A lot of pitchers like to pitch me in a lot. I wasn't necessarily crowding the plate, but they like to pitch me in. I think they know that, that pitch was what I liked. As far as pitchers, really enjoyed facing Aroldis Chapman just because of the battle, the competition, the moment where I got to face him the most in the World Series right here. And he threw a lot of fastballs. As a hitter, it can be so fast, but if you're seeing that majority of the time, eventually you're going to time up and sync with it. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it gets I enjoyed that. David Price, I like to face. He was a teammate of mine for a little, and then faced him a good amount. And then, who owned me the most was CC Sabathia. I think I'm like 1 or 2 for 30 something off of him. It was always, I just feel like he's like this big lineman, big body. And I just would literally, I feel like roll over to short or third every time, no matter. I could visualize success as much as I want. It didn't matter. I could do every mental trick in the book. He just owned me for whatever reason. So.
Not many lefties can say that about you, right?
Yeah, he definitely can.
So hitting's changed a lot in the past few years, and obviously pitching even more so. I'm curious, like when you look back on your career, obviously you see guys doing high speed, on the machines. They're doing way more random practice. They're hitting with foam balls. They're, the days of just kind of grooving low key BP are slowly going away. Do you look back and say, hey, if I had some of this technology, 5-10 years ago, things would have been really different for you? How would it have impacted your approach?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what? Later on in my career, I started to try to utilize the technology, whether hit tracks or the thing on the bottom of your knob. Yeah. I was never a fan of it. For me, it was like the less I think and the less I'm trying, the better I do. Yeah. So when it comes to those hitting tools, I wasn't always a big fan, because I would see like the hit tracks. I would want to get like the highest exit velo, and get out of my swing, get tense, and I feel like it messed me up a little bit. But what I do love, and I think it's the best thing, is either a machine high velo or a BP pitcher like throwing pretty hard but mixing up the pitches. I think because you're training your eyes right there, so I think that's the absolute best.
Did you watch a lot of video pregame as well? Were you big on scouting stuff?
A little. Like with the Indians, they had like TVs throughout the clubhouse, and like before the game, they would have the starting pitcher up. I would just watch watch video of me against him in the past and see what he's done against me and what I've done against him that worked. But I wouldn't get too crazy with that, because once again, the less I'm thinking, 2-1 count. Would he throw 30% of the time? He throws this, so that doesn't work for me. While other players, looking at video and knowing that kind of stuff, knowing like the umpire's zone and all that, they can do it. They like it. They're wired that way. Personally, for me, didn't really love it.
One thing I'm actually really fascinated about, and actually talked about this a little bit with Kevin Youkilis, but a theme that resounds throughout your career is one of like plate discipline. There were years in your career when like your hit by pitch, which usually was a league leader, added with your walks was just about even with your strikeout numbers. I'm curious, were there specific practices that you used to develop, plate discipline? Like, do you have suggestions for aspiring players who want to just have better swing decisions and pitch recognition?
Yeah, so it's funny you bring that up. I feel like when it comes to plate discipline, for me, I was a super aggressive hitter. I went up there just I wanted to hit. I didn't want to walk. So I didn't actually walk a ton.
Mhm.
But those hit by pitch, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
kind of got those numbers, and got that on base percentage up there.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you right now, I never went up to the plate looking to ever
Mhm.
get hit. It just ended up happening because
Yeah.
lefties would pitch me in a lot. When I would stride, my front foot would kind of go, in towards the chalk. And I think I trained myself and I wired to, once we talked about earlier, whatever you can do to help the team win.
Yeah.
I looked at hit by pitch, same as a single. Let the guys
Yeah.
behind you drive me in. You're getting on base. Then you have a chance to
Yeah.
steal, score runs, help your
Mhm.
team. And I mean, I got hit 90 or so times in the big leagues, never missed a game one. I mean, obviously you
Yeah.
can get unlucky and get hurt. But the
Mhm.
odds of you getting a very horrible injury, yeah, it's going to
Mhm.
be painful for a little, but it goes
Yep.
away. So I just kind of wired myself to not be afraid to be getting hit
Mhm.
by pitch. And I know just from retiring, and I would make a post about 5 tips to get over the fear of hit by pitch.
Mhm.
And literally everyone's reaching out. What are they? What are they? So many youth athletes that I didn't
Yeah.
realize when I played that have the fear of getting hit and
Yeah.
quitting early because of
Mhm.
it. And it's tough to see. So, what I would say to athletes out there is you can train yourself not to want to get hit, but train yourself that it doesn't matter if you get hit. You're not
Yeah.
going to get hurt. You're going to look at it like you just got a single. You can
Mhm.
practice it, get a softball or something. If you
Yeah.
really have that fear, have someone throw a softball and practice getting out of the way the right way. But I think
Mhm.
the most important is have an amazing pre-pitch routine. And when
Mhm.
you're hitting, be so focused on your approach, whether you're trying to hit a line drive to right center field or line drive right up the middle, whatever pitch you're looking for. Because if you're not, then you're going to be thinking in your
Yeah.
head that Wolf we talked about is going to be thinking,
Yeah.
oh God, get ready if it's inside move,
Mhm.
instead of, okay, let's see the ball, hit the ball, crush it. So that's what I would pass on. I didn't have the greatest plate discipline, but when it comes to hitting, I feel like I have the experience now and knowledge to help a lot of players with that fear of getting hit by pitch. So hopefully that helps.
That's really good feedback. And it's timely too, because we know hit by pitches in baseball are up, the last couple of years. I think it has a lot to do with, pitchers who just have nastier stuff, bigger velo than ever before.
Mhm.
And all that guys are learning like new sliders on the internet and trying it in major league games the next day. So it's a different world, and it's definitely happening at higher
Yeah.
rates. And, we're even seeing it from like an injury rate standpoint, more and more like, wrist and fingers, things like that are getting hit by pitches, becoming more of like kind of injured list scenarios.
Yeah.
Maybe it's part of a bigger discussion. Is a lot of people are, they're calling baseball ugly nowadays because of, more strikeouts, the crazy reliance on the shift, all these different things. Games are going too long. Like, do you think baseball is trending in a good direction, a bad direction? Like, where do you see this going in the years ahead, both in terms of like, untapped market inefficiencies and, how can we make the game less ugly if you actually do feel like it is?
I mean, if I'm going to be honest, if I'm a fan watching the game, I'm not really into, all these strikeouts and stuff
Mhm.
like that. I'm into just a lot of action. Obviously home runs are up. Those are fun
Mhm.
to watch, but you're getting so many strikeouts
Yeah.
and shifts and everything. I don't know. To me, it takes away the fun a little bit. And I wouldn't enjoy it as much if I was a fan watching personally.
Mhm.
But how we can bring it back. I thought a good start getting the DH in the National League. I thought that
Yeah.
helped. That is a big turn. But I just think it ebbs and flows. Like the strikeouts are up, pitchers are
Yeah.
doing this thing, then hitters are gonna make the adjustments eventually. I think it's just gonna kind of keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, just one or two set
Yeah.
things to do. I don't know, but I think the DH in the National League is a
Yeah.
great way to start.
I think we're starting to see it already. I think even just in the first like week or so of the season, like swing and miss on four seams is way down. Guys are practicing it more. They're all hitting high velo on the machine, and
And that
you
high
know,
pitch too, get
yeah,
better at that.
yeah. We go through these iterations of everyone wants to throw four seams, and you hear about the elite ones, but we don't realize that there are a whole bunch of guys who throw mediocre four seams who are just trying it out, and those guys start getting hit, and then there's always kind of that market correction.
Yeah.
As you look back, and we kind of talked about a little bit with respect to technology and stuff, but what resources now could have made you better? Like I know you're obviously huge in the mental skills world now. Did you feel like those resources were there for you enough, or was that something that you started doing like in retirement because you realized there was such a shortage of them in the pro game?
Yeah. So when it comes to the mental side, back in 2000 to 2003, when I was struggling at Herndon High School in Northern Virginia, not many people, if anyone, were talking about mental performance. Luckily, that book I showed you, a coach told me about it going into senior year. But I would say nowadays there's so much more talk about it. There's so many more resources, whether you go to YouTube or whatever you can find. There's books, podcasts. So I think that would have helped so much. The first 3 years of my career in high school, what I feel would have been drastically different. But in a way, I'm glad I didn't, because like I said, those failures, I was able to learn and get to know myself even better. And then every single year, I got more and more into the mental game. And, I showed you this book written by Ken Ravizza. Fast forward 7 years after reading it, he's the sports psychologist with the Tampa Bay Rays as he follows Joe Madden everywhere. So I get to talk to him like, again, you changed the trajectory of my life with your book. Thank you so much. And then I get to work with him one-on-one. So pretty much all my big league career, I got to have a coach, whether it was him, a couple others, a guy I literally had on call. And once again, just because I knew all this stuff didn't mean I still, it was easy. I still struggle mentally. And I always like to tell people when they ask, like, does it mean it's just like everything became a lot easier for you? I say, no. What it did was it didn't take me out of the game. When I was struggling at all the levels, I would have been done if I didn't already work on these mental skills. And I think a lot of people wait too late to when they really need it. Then, now I'm going to get a mental coach. But it could be the end of your road if So, the mental side of the game would have helped so much early on in my career. But nowadays, I feel like every minor league has someone they can talk to. College is getting out there. In high school and all that. But I still don't even think it's talked about enough. That's why I am doing what I'm doing. I took my obsession, the physical side is super important. I think physical skills plus mental skills equals any athlete unlocked. So you need both. But I was obsessed with both sides, but specifically the mental side, because I knew how it changed my life. So that's why I am so obsessed and started right when I retired doing this. Because I saw what it did for me and so many other players out there.
That's awesome. No, so I'm curious. So obviously your success with it, the difference it made for you, drew you to that realm and realized it was kind of a post-career calling. Did you see maybe specific shortcomings in the way that it was offered to players, whether it was just like a lack of, total resources for, the hundreds of thousands of players out there? Was it specific ways that maybe these things were given to athletes? Was it just that, hey, social media opens up this, larger opportunity to distribute this important information? Like where were the holes, I guess, in the industry that you thought we needed to address?
Yeah. So I thought I could differentiate myself because I played at the highest level on the biggest stage of all the World Series. So I had that aspect, but then obviously, I was good using it for myself and as a player. Now, I need to become the best coach I can be, because just because it worked for me, like we talked about a couple of times, doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. And so I went through a guy named Brian Kane. I went through his certification. He's hard to beat, Brian Kane. Went through a couple others, got certified. So now I wanted to take what I learned, my on-field experience, now getting trained by the best of the best in the mental game. And I just truly believe there's no one out there that can do that. And so I think I know what it's like to be in players' shoes, because I failed and I struggled at every single level. So when they're going through it, I've been in their shoes. I know what it's like when you're over 10 or over 30. I don't know if you can, and in no way am I bashing any minor league or any mental performance coach out there. But I feel like a lot of them have never been in the shoes, on field, real experience, trust me, they're still great. but that's where I differentiate myself. And whether I don't know if there's a big hole, but I just knew I was so passionate about it, and this was my calling to help positively impact as many players' lives on and off the field. So we've been talking about sports the whole time. I'm telling you, the players that come through, my full intention is make them the best person they could be, because then it's going to transfer. You're going to be able to handle failure, adversity, pressure, challenges that come inevitably with baseball and life, and makes them better. So that is really the biggest part of the program. Build the person, then boom, on the field, they're much better. And then they're set up for life no matter what they're doing, because it directly translates to every single thing. I was only 35 when I retired. I had so many things to do now, like years in my life, but because I've been working on these my whole life, it directly translated. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm so passionate about it. But I don't think there's a big hole. I just knew I differentiated myself from everybody else out there.
Yeah. And it's one of the things I think is really intriguing is you look at some of like the best managers in baseball, the guys that are out there doing it. Very rarely were they Cy Young Award winners, MVPs, anything like that. Most of the elite, coaches who were having a lot of success, they often were like backup catchers. They were super utility players. They were guys that understood like what their role was. And I'm always fascinated with that. And the thing that it comes down to is, I think a lot of times what we don't appreciate about professional athletes is they have to be inherently selfish. Like you have to eat when you want to, sleep when you want to, train when you want to. Your family schedule works around game time. Like inherently, to be a great Major League Baseball player, you have to be 100% focused on your craft. Sometimes to the detriment of, like, think about it. How many 4th of July barbecues did you miss for your baseball career?
Spring break.
That was exactly, that was what it was. And coaching takes a complete different like calibration. You have to serve. Like it is your job to make everybody around you better, to empower them to do what they need to do. And it's interesting in the sense that you had so much self-awareness as a player to know, hey, get hit by a pitch and steal second and score on a ground ball, in a big spot. All that stuff is huge because it in a lot of ways probably prepared you for this day that you were in this coaching role to serve those around you. So it's pretty cool to see, kind of like, maybe whether you recognize it or not, there was a direct translation between the two.
Yeah. And, when I'm talking to athletes, the very first thing I say is I feel like, and this might be a little off topic, but not really, the ultimate game that every athlete, every person should be playing. This is from Aristotle thousands of years ago and the positive psychology movement now. Ultimate game, ultimate purpose of life, be the best you, but like you said, in service to something else. So if you're a coach, into service to the athletes. If you're a parent or whatever, in service to your kids. So that's what I try to get across. And that's what I struggle with, I think, the most those first 3 years in high school. I was so selfish and all about me. And then obviously you're chasing those results.
Yeah.
You're not going to get them most of the time. And if you do, science is proving you're less psychologically stable than those who are intrinsically motivated to be their best self. And then it's a paradox. You get all that extrinsic stuff you're after. But I think I was just chasing those results, chasing being popular, chasing being the cool kid. There's no social media back then, but I probably would have been chasing more followers and stuff like that. Yeah. The moment we can stop playing the wrong game and play the ultimate game, be our best self in service to something bigger than ourselves, literally everything changes. So I think that's where it helped me a lot too, making that shift. And I think having kids initially made that even more so. And now literally it's all I'm doing right now, just trying to be of service like you talked about.
That's awesome. So talk to me about the projects you got in the works, because I know you've got some, Gabe Kapler, you got Shane Bieber, you got some really cool guests in the mix and guys that you worked with, and were teammates with during your playing career. So talk to us about how you're delivering some of this really good information to the masses.
Yeah. So I like to call it mental strength training. I know there's mental performance training. I like to call it mental strength training, but it's still the same mental skills. So basically I do group training online. The class just ended. There's another class coming in. I think the first class had over 100 individual players coming through. It was just baseball. This is baseball and softball. This next one, that's on May 12th. So basically every 2 or 3 months, starting a group training, and it lasts for 8 weeks. We go over 8 milestones. So 1 a week, and then bring on former teammates and coaches of mine. And like Jessica Mendoza, she's coming on for the next class to bring along some softball players. So we do that for 8 weeks. And that's just the class portion. And then besides that, I'm just traveling around the country speaking with, whether it's high schools, colleges, organizations, whatever it is, just trying to spread the word and really just take everything that I learned during my career and everything I learned working with some of the top mental performance coaches in the world, and spread the word on it, spread the word on the importance, but also spread the word on what it will do for you or your son or daughter off the field too. So man, just obsessed with this right now, and I think it's my calling, and I'm loving it.
I like it, man. And we'll make sure everybody knows where to find out about you, but we always do a lightning round. It can be as long a response as you are. I don't even know why we call it this, but so we always wrap up with, tell me about hitters you like to watch in today's game, or you know what, players, just because I think you probably see it from a much bigger picture of, you know, defense and all that stuff too. So who do you like to watch right now and why?
I think Juan Soto definitely stands out. His approach at the plate, him owning the box, him going up there, and the other guy is Joey Votto. Those two, I mean, I like a lot of players, but they stick out because you can tell watching them that they have a plan. They know what they're doing in the box. They're not just going up there swinging to swing. And just like the presence and everything. I really enjoy watching them. I was watching Joey Votto the other day, and I was like, his stance looks so different. Like he's all straight up, totally different than I've ever seen him. But you can just tell he gets to the same position, but he still has that same thought process. You can just tell and see it. And then guys like Ronald Acuna Jr., Mike Trout, all those fun guys that really can do it all, you know, not just hitting, but defense and space running. So those guys stand out.
I love it. All right. So give teenage Brandon Geyer some advice if you could go back in time.
So I would hit on the what I just said, play the ultimate game. You're playing baseball, you're playing any sport, but that's not the ultimate game. The ultimate game is becoming the best you in service to something bigger than yourself. So I would say that. And then I would say control the controllables. I just way too much would focus on what was out of my control or what happened in the past or what could happen in the future rather than being right here, right now in the present moment, which is for the Major League Mindset program, really the main goal. Help you play free and loose, but get you to funnel everything to the present moment so you can go literally one pitch at a time. One of those things that's harder. It's a lot easier said than done. Control the controllables is the number one skill, and it's the foundation of everything I do. So I think that is the number one thing I would tell my younger self. Control the controllables, but don't just say it. When you're actually in the heat of the battle and things aren't going your way, stop being a victim, be that warrior, and ask yourself, what do you want? What needs to get done? Don't blame others. Don't criticize. Don't make excuses. That's what I would tell myself.
And then I'm going to throw another one at you. I use it with some guys, and I'm actually really intrigued with your response. Give me one of your favorite teammates of all time and why. Who did you like to play alongside, and what was the rationale that they stand out as one of your favorites? So you had a bunch.
Yeah, I had a bunch. I would say Yan Gomes, one of my favorite, just because the way he carried himself, the way he prepared, he was one of those guys that there's guys up there, I noticed it right away, that they're just satisfied to get to the big leagues or they're doing it for the wrong reasons. He's a guy, he's a family man, just a great all-around guy, but how he prepared himself each and every game. You could tell him and the pitchers were really close and on the same page. So Yan Gomes always stood out. Love him. He's like a brother. Kevin Kiermaier is another guy. I think it stood out his athleticism. And, while I hated being in left or right field and I'd be camped under a ball and he'd run and catch it under me, it always stood out. What a freak he is, but it doesn't just happen by chance. He was a late round pick, and then he put the work in to continue to grow every level. And I just feel like his work ethic, and he's just a good role. They're both just really good role models on and off the field for all ages and all sports to look at. And okay, that's an example of who you need to be as a person, or should strive to be as a person and player. So those two stand out.
That's awesome. So tell our audience a little bit more. I mean, you got a great Twitter presence, regular content out there, and BrandonGeyer.com is the kind of the hub for all your activities. How can people learn more about what you're doing, the courses you talked about?
Yeah, so any social media, BrandonGeyer.com really has everything. That's where you can enroll in the next class, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Good stuff. I'm excited to check it out myself. And hey, man, this was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. I think it's it's one thing to like you said, to speak like the mental skills language, another thing altogether to back it up with some really important real world experience at the highest level. So I picked up some good tidbits here. So I'm gonna give this one an extra listen on the back end once we get it published. So thanks for taking the time.
All right, thanks, Cressey. Appreciate it.